Hello and welcome to another edition of Smash the Numbers. In today's episode, we are going to go through all of Michigan's schedule and at least the home games. I'll also pick a couple of road games, and we're going to figure out what the get in the door price is for you as a fan. And then we're going to rank them according to an index, which I will create in terms of which game is the best value from top to bottom for all of the home Michigan games, plus a couple of road games. Sun is setting here in Carlsbad, California. The beginning of this video will probably be in the light, but will be in the darkness by the end. Hope you enjoy. All right. So what we're going to do, like we did in the last recording, is I've done Excel. I've taken the Excel data, put it into PowerPoint, and then kind of uploaded it into this streaming tool, StreamYard. So I'm going to, that it seems to work best. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing. Let's go ahead and share now. And we'll go back to the first page. Let's not forget, Michigan has 45 championships. That was my point of this slide. Now, next slide. So let's look through this in detail. What we're doing is we're showing every home game. I have also added the two best road games, Washington and OSU, to this list. We've got the dates of the games, the times of the games, the game itself, and then what I have here is the get in the door price. Now, for this, I used StubHub. There are many other companies out there for resale tickets. I use StubHub, and most should be pretty close to each other in terms of price. I included the fees. I don't like looking at a price without the fees. So this is the get in the door price, and it includes fees. And this is for a pair of tickets together, but it's a single game ticket price. So if you need two tickets, I didn't look for singles. I look for two together, and this is the price per ticket. So we see that Fresno State, if you want to go to opening day, which is a night game, or opening night, if you want to call it that, it's going to cost you $121. For Texas, it'll be $676, an astronomical amount. Going through the other games, you've got Arkansas State at $87, one of the lowest prices. USC, $321. Minnesota, 133. Washington, this is at Washington, 354. MSU, 258. Oregon, 265. Northwestern, only 68. And then we have OSU at 455. Interesting that OSU at OSU is a lower price than the Texas game. Okay, now what I did then, after this is I went ahead and did a price index. What I did is I took the Northwestern game, which was the least expensive game, gave it a 1.0, and basically looked at all of the other prices in comparison to the Northwestern price. You can see that basically the Texas game is 10 times the price of the Northwestern game with the fees. So then everything else is kind of indexed accordingly. The number of times bigger in price each of these games are compared to Northwestern. That's how I did the price index. The next thing I did is I went for basically computing an atmosphere. So the atmosphere is a combination of the opponent, the time of game, a little bit of weather, and when in the season the game is being played. And I actually just went 1 through 10, although I did have a tie here. So the number one game is the OSU game. I gave that the number one ranking. Number two is Oregon. Uh, as I talked about in a previous video, I believe Oregon is the pivotal game in the season, regardless of whether Michigan beats Texas or not. If they do run the table in the other games, Oregon will mean, um, if they lose to Texas, it will mean really their chances of getting into the playoffs. Yes, no. Win Oregon, they're in. Lose Oregon, they're out. With only OSU as being kind of like the 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 game that could save them, right? So um, if they do beat Texas, it's even more of an inside track to win the Big Ten title and also get a bye for the playoffs. So either way, I believe Oregon is the most important game, most pivotal game for the season. For Michigan, I gave it number two in terms of importance / atmosphere here. Number three would be Texas. So I think that makes sense. The three big games at OSU, then Oregon, then Texas. Number four, I'm giving to Washington. This is an away game, but the atmosphere will be electric in that game. So I'm going to give it. I'm going to give that the number four position. Number five, I'm actually giving a tie here. USC and MSU. Um, it's hard to not rank the MSU game high in terms of atmosphere when it's Michigan versus its in-state arch rival. So I'm going to give that a five, but USC should be sort of on par with that. So I'll give both of those a five. That was my only tie, so to speak. There is no six because I gave two of them a five. Then you've got number seven, Fresno State. It is a night game and it's the first game of the year, so I'm kind of counting that higher than the others in this the remaining teams, remaining games in the schedule. Then we've got Minnesota, and then we've got Arkansas State, and last I have Northwestern. The reason why I have them Northwestern as last is um, it is a lesser opponent, and it is in late November, sandwich game between Oregon and OSU. I'm guessing Michigan is not going to be playing their greatest game here. Might in effect try to blow out Northwestern and see if they can rest players for OSU. So I'm just not thinking that this is you're not going to see the best version of Michigan during this game. Okay, so then the next thing that I did is I summed the price index and the atmosphere, and lower is better for this sum. So the closer you can get to really two would be the lowest score that you could get out of this, the better. And you can see how I've ranked these. I'll show these in visuals in a minute or two, but you can see how I've see what those scores are. You can see the highest score is Texas, so that's kind of like the worst score. The lowest score, according to all of this, is Oregon. All right. Then what I did is win probability. So win probability, this is based on my previous video. So if you look at win probability, what I'm saying is, you know what, if they lose the game, you're probably not going to be that happy. You went to a game, but Michigan lost. That should be factored in. So basically, I use that percentage. I kind of divided it by this sum. So I take the sum divided by the percentage, and then compute a new score, which I'm calling the Farris index. So two ways to look at it. I'm kind of factoring in yes or no. Do you really care if the team wins? I do. I do want Michigan to win, and that should be a factor in the game as well. All right. So now let's kind of look at this. Oh, sorry. Let's look at this in terms of all of the games and kind of how they're clustered. And remember, lower is better. So as we're kind of looking at these, really I see, we'll go kind of the lower cluster first. So you see these four teams are pretty bunched up here: Northwestern, Arkansas State, Minnesota, and Fresno State. Of those four, I would say Fresno State is kind of the closest to the lower numbers. So I would say out of those four games, Fresno State's going to have nice weather. It's going to be in the evening, and it's going to be opening day or opening night. It makes sense. The atmosphere is going to be very nice for that game. I would say out of those four games, go to this one. All right. Then we have really two games that are kind of, well, maybe three games that are kind of bunched together. Let's put these three together: MSU, USC, and Washington. Out of those three, obviously this is at Washington. I'm on the West Coast, so for me, okay, that seems like the game I'd go to. Obviously, if you're not going to travel, yeah, you're trying to make a decision between MSU and USC. I would say MSU is slightly better as a game to go to. You're probably going to get a better atmosphere with Michigan State. USC, I'm guessing a lot of away fans will show up for that. Same thing with MSU, but we know what the MSU Michigan game atmosphere is like. And even if Michigan blows them out by a lot, that atmosphere is going to be a good one. Um, there'll be a question mark as to whether this is a night game. This might be given a night game status as well. So just something to consider there. Um, for those of you who are on the West Coast like myself, Washington game is very appealing. There is a chance of a loss there, or a lot, or at least a tight game there, because Michigan will be traveling to the West Coast. It'll be, other than OSU, it'll be the toughest game on their schedule that's away. So just something to consider there as well. Um, all right, then we've got OSU, Oregon, and Texas, the big three. And Texas is an outlier. The price is so astronomical that I would say, I mean, if you have a ticket, that's great, but you may actually consider selling your ticket and funding other things, because that price is so high. It's higher than what people were paying for the Rose Bowl, Michigan versus Alabama last year. So I'm just going to call that an outlier and say, you know what, it doesn't make sense to go to the Texas game. Okay, so now we've got Oregon and at OSU. Intriguing here. Actually, the at OSU is a better deal than Texas, maybe even including travel down there. Now, you know, uh, I've been asking around as to whether a Michigan fan with Michigan plates, are they safe going to Ohio State, going to Columbus, and going to the game and wearing Michigan stuff and all that kind of stuff? So, factor that in. I'm assuming in this analysis that your safety is okay. Nobody's going to really bother you. Maybe that assumption is not correct. People will bother you, but let's say you're in a Michigan section, you're okay. Or well, it's the cheapest price to get into the door, so I can't assume that it's a Michigan section. But let's just assume you're okay. Maybe actually the OSU game is, in comparison to Texas, is a better game to go to, but, and I'll show this in a second, the probability of winning is lower, and we have to be realistic about this. An away game at OSU versus a home game versus Texas, I think the chances of winning the Texas game are higher. So you've got to factor that in. But for whatever reason, if Michigan is able to beat OSU for the fourth time in a row, push that number of days to over 2,000, the number of days since OSU has won against Michigan. You want to be there. So, just kind of consider that as an away game. If Michigan were to win, you probably, and there's no damage to your car. There's no, nobody's bothering you. Then I would say the OSU game is worth going to. All right. So then it leaves Oregon, which I have as, personally the game I would go to. As it stands now, Oregon is the higher is, like I mentioned earlier, the pivotal game. It looks like it's going to be an evening game. Um, so that's the game I would go to if it were me. Now, after I did the math, let's kind of look at what it looks like. Again, lower is better here. I did the math here, and what we see is actually MSU comes out on top. That is actually factoring in probability of winning. So when we factor in probability of winning, MSU is the top game, followed by obviously the value and the atmosphere, followed by Fresno State, followed by Washington, then Arkansas State, Minnesota, Northwestern, and then we have USC, and then we have Oregon, and then we have OSU, and then finally Texas. So if we look at it that way, uh, you want a great atmosphere. You want all the way through. You want a relatively low price, and you want a high probability of Michigan winning. Well, then MSU uh, is the game you should go to. Yeah, out of all the games that are in the schedule. So anyway, two ways to look at it. You can do it in terms of looking at it in terms of, hey, I do want the Michigan to win the game, but I want a great atmosphere. Or you can look at it in terms of, okay, let's plot the atmosphere, let's plot the price of the ticket, and I want a good value. So Oregon or MSU would be my final answer based on how you are looking at this. All right. So let me know what you think. You see all the prices. Do a little freeze on that chart that kind of shows all the prices right now. Kind of go through the schedule. Let me know which game you're going to and why. Let me know if you are considering going to the OSU game. In theory, what you could do is you could sell the Texas ticket if you have the Texas ticket, and probably afford, with the proceeds from that, to buy an OSU ticket, OSU game ticket, and you might even be able to cover your transportation down there as well as hotel down there for basically break even with that Texas game. So just something to kind of think about if you're really interested in going to that Ohio State game. Um, for me, if I could, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to logistically do it, but if I could, I'd go to the Oregon game as a home game, as I think a night game, uh, or I would consider going to that MSU game for that home game. Away game, I'm on the West Coast, so I'm thinking that Washington game might be worth it. I think it is going to be a really nice atmosphere, something unique. Lots of Michigan fans there, high probability of winning, but also a high, score in terms of the atmosphere, a relatively high score in terms of the atmosphere. Let me know what you think in the comments below.